Hi everyone, welcome to the Redbridge Independent Podcast. My name is Bilal, and today I'm joined by Shorful. Shorful is a candidate in the Goodmayes board. We're really excited to be talking to him, finding out all about Goodmayes, all about him, and all about his plans for the election. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I've met you outside this room. I know you very well. We've had many conversations. We've been camping together.
Yeah.
But for people who don't know you, maybe just start by telling us who you are.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. So I am Shorful Islam. I've been a resident of Goodmayes for 16 years or over 16 years. Family man, got kids. I run my own company. I run a data and analytics consultancy. And yeah, I've, pretty much enjoyed living in Goodmayes, but then decided I'm going to do something about the deteriorating condition that Goodmayes is falling into.
Yeah. So why now? Why 2026? And why Redbridge Independence?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've always been a Labour supporter. So I thought Labour support, and just beyond the Palestine issues, the more I've looked into it, they seem to have just taken us for granted, especially in Redbridge. So they sort of dominate the council, and they're just taking us for granted. They do whatever they want. So we've had these developments go up. And again, I'm happy for houses to be built so people got some places to live. But alongside the developments, there's got to be services, right? There's got to be the appropriate services for people to, have access to GPs,
100%.
Those kind of things.
We'll just talk about the one on Seven Kings High Road.
Yeah.
So that's one of quite a few,
Three.
right?
So at the moment, between Seven Kings Station and Goodmayes Station, there will be three big developments.
Wow.
So as I understand, we've got the one where the old home base used to be.
Yeah.
So right near the, I think it's Lidl and McDonald's.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be the Tesco Towers that everybody's talking about, the toxic towers. That's 1,400 homes going to go there. So you can imagine what's going to happen. And it's not just the housing, it's the congestion that comes with it. It's not been thought out.
Yeah. I think obviously with that many houses, that many people, like you said, it's going to be major issues. Traffic, access to GPs, schooling could be an issue, parking, traffic, like that obviously hasn't been thought out.
No, so one of the things when I knock on people's doors is that they tell me that they're being ignored by the council. The council's not listening to them. So if you take the school issue, for example, when those Tesco's were originally designed, there was meant to be a primary school there.
Yeah.
Then they're telling us that, we don't need it because there won't be enough children. They're not providing the evidence, they're just going ahead and doing it. Same with like a GP practice. I think I'm hearing conversation that we may not even get a GP practice or some kind of clinic. And if you think about how poorly run they're doing in King George Hospital at the A&E, where are people meant to go?
Corridor care is so big in King George right now. How can they expect that to carry on?
I don't know. And this is why I'm standing. Okay? Because no one's listening to people in Goodmayes. So rather than me just be another person who's complaining, I've decided to do something about it and stand as a candidate.
That's good. I think that we need more people like that.
Yeah.
Just come forward and do something.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of that. Like I say, when I go door to door, a lot of people would like to make change, but it's hard, isn't it? Everybody's got things to do. They've got life, they've got family, they've got work. Not everyone can change. So I thought, someone's got to do it, and why not?
Yeah, exactly. As you know, I'm in Mayfield.
I know.
Mayfield and Goodmayes. Exactly, neighbours, that's what to say. I think we share a lot of the same quote-unquote issues or things that need to be changed. But what's something surprising about Goodmayes? What's something about Goodmayes that's surprising?
I mean, the interesting thing about Goodmayes is that you would be surprised how diverse the community is. So normally, when you go about your business, you sort of meet people who you're sort of friends and familiar with. But as I've gone down knocking on doors, even on my own road, I've met people that I didn't know would be there. So, people from different backgrounds, different ethnicity, different races, different jobs, different professions. And I meet very interesting people as I knock on all the doors. So you'll be surprised how diverse Goodmayes is, even though it may not seem it from the surface.
Yeah. And you just said that you're out talking to residents, out canvassing. So
every week.
Oh, good. That's what I like to hear. I think like you, I'm also out every week.
Yeah, I know. we coordinate on the group.
Yeah, exactly. But what's one thing you're hearing residents say again and again?
Yeah, so again, beyond the thing what I mentioned that they feel they're being ignored. Okay, so people don't feel safe. So people are saying they don't feel safe around the Goodmayes area. We've got the Goodmayes Park, and so people don't feel safe around there. There's some alleyways and things. The other thing that people are talking about is fly tipping. It's interesting because some of the houses in Goodmayes are quite big, as you know, and so when the houses back onto each other and you've got roads where there's no houses facing the roads, people are dumping things on those neighbourhoods.
Wow.
And so people have been frustrated and they keep complaining. The council comes and takes it away, but there's no prosecution. Like I knocked on one resident's house. He has CCTV footage of the van that fly tip. Council wasn't interested.
Wow.
So yeah. So it goes back to the thing, they're not being listened to. They feel that the council's not listening to them.
Ignored.
And the other thing is, like when I went down knocking, and we were knocking way before like the county election stuff. We're talking probably 16 weeks ago or something. People were like, nobody's ever come around.
That's a beat you.
Okay.
August.
Yeah, I know. I know you go. But but they were saying no one's come around, no one's asked for our opinion. They only come at election time. So they were happy to see us come because we are concerned. Like I said, I tell everybody I live locally, so I am concerned about your concerns.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really powerful about Redbridge Independence. We're so rooted in our community. I think everything we do comes from a place of we live here, we breathe this air, we want to fix it because we are residents of this area. I think current councillors sometimes don't live in their ward.
No.
Sometimes don't really have that
Connection.
interest, exactly that connection.
The other thing is there's also nuances in wards. So for example, like when I go to roads where there's school, for example, they have those new marking, the new signs that says you can't have. So I understand the residents who live there, they don't want people parking when they're dropping their kids off.
Yeah.
But I also understand the parents' point of view who drop them off. Some parents do come from the other side of Redbridge, dropping their kids off. It's raining. So I think you have to live in the area to understand the nuances of what it means to live in Goodmayes. For example, if you take Goodmayes Road, we've got the train station there, but it's actually a very narrow road coming onto a big junction with the I Road. And so you end up with a lot of congestion there. So it's all very well saying, well, should we put yellow lines? Should we do this? Should we do that? But you've got to see it from all points of view and make sure that you're catering for all residents. And unless you live in that ward, how are you going to know?
No, 100%. I think you're right. I think because I live in a ward where there's a very prominent councillor. I think a lot of people know who that is.
Yeah.
It's only more than that. I think having him in that ward was very worrying because our ward in particular was going downhill at a crazy rate. But the road he lives on seems to be great. Seems to be no potholes, great street. So that just shows that there's no integrity left in politics.
Yeah,
I think that's something we're bringing back, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, you find the people, so you've always got the people who care about the area, but then you've got the people who just become despondent.
Yeah.
Right? They just, I don't care, politics is corrupt, I don't want to get involved. And part of my sort of passion is just to convince them to re-engage. You know what it's like? You go on the door and they go, "No, I'm not interested in politics." And you just feel if you could just convince them and get a vote, that's a vote for change.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think one thing I'm constantly saying is, yes, you might be not interested in politics, but I always go from the angle of like, this is the most important election.
Yeah.
Yes, national elections are important, but local elections. Exactly. That we decide who does your bins, where your child goes to school. We decide about your GP appointments, by your roads. This is all really important things like local issues. This is where they get fixed, and your council chamber.
You know what's really interesting is if you look at other boroughs, especially boroughs that have got this independent movement going on, they're offering free school meals, they're offering breakfast clubs.
Exactly.
How can they afford it and we can't?
Exactly.
And we should be doing the same for our residents as other boroughs are doing for their residents.
100%.
And I don't know how you feel, Bilal, but in your ward, it's not as if, everyone's affluent just because there's like nice houses and stuff. There are people who are in hard times, and especially with the cost of living crisis. Even people who before were comfortable feel probably now that they can't afford basic.
It's you're right. Like Mayfield is very. I think Mayfield is very unique in that one part of Mayfield is very affluent, bungalow estates, beautiful, green, lush.
Big gardens.
Big gardens, exactly. You go 10 seconds down the road to Gordon Road, to Henley Road. It's dirty. The roads aren't clean. Littering, fly tipping. How is that normal in a ward?
And the other thing is like, where is the control? I don't know how about you guys, but like for example, I live on a big house with a road with big houses.
Yeah.
And what's happening is as soon as the family leaves, developers come in and convert into HMOs.
Exactly.
And again, like I said, I do believe that everybody's entitled to housing, but the council should be looking over and saying, beyond the housing, what is the community that we're trying to create?
Yes, exactly.
If you suddenly create a whole road of HMOs, and you're just going to end up with transient population that won't embed themselves into this community.
Exactly.
So, and that I believe is the role of the council. It's not just to make sure that things are working. They should also make sure that we have a community to live in and that we want to live in there.
100%.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, Redbridge was such a beautiful ward. People love to talk about
I lived in Walthamstow and I looked across thinking I wanted to come to Redbridge.
There you go. Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel about it, but are you not knocking on doors where people are saying, if it's not going to get better, I'm going to leave?
Yes.
And that's really sad. They've been there their whole lives.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying they want to move further out to Essex, like Southend or Ongar. People saying they want to leave the country because they've had enough of our government. So I feel like you're right, 100%. I haven't even thought about that. But there's a lot of talk about change is not coming. What's the point?
Exactly.
I hear that a lot. What's the point?
Exactly. And this is where I think the council needs to, sort of get engaged with the community and see what does the community want, what would make our community or the people in our neighborhood want to stay and form a community, right?
100%. What does community look like to you?
So, community looks like looking after your neighbors, knowing who's living across the road. If you're going to school or to the local mosque or to this temple, that you meet the same people and you say hello and you smile. I try to do that. I try to, whenever I go, try to smile, say hello to people, even people I don't know. Only because I used to live away when I was studying. I lived in Hertfordshire, then Kent, and then Lincoln.
Yeah.
And so I lived in small towns, and so you sort of get to know, and you get that habit of saying hello to people. And I want to bring that back. I want to bring us back. I know Redbridge has now become like homogenous and big, but I still think, if a neighbour moves in, go and say hello. We are quite fortunate, across our road, we do the sort of the iftars, the Eids. When there's sort of Sikh or Hindu celebrations, they'll come around with their mitais and stuff. So that's quite nice, but I'd like to see more of that.
100%.
And I'd like neighbours to know neighbours.
That's true. I think Mayfield has lost a lot of its community.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm really sad about. Because growing up, do you know Knoxfield? No. On South Park Drive, there's a really big green space. I think now the school take ownership of it, or the council does. But growing up, that place had like events, car boot sales, fireworks shows, food events, and like now there's nothing.
Yeah, and also that's another thing I'd like to address. I don't expect the council to run these, but I expect the council to facilitate them, not put red tape in the way, and then people are just like, I can't be bothered, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if the community wants to get together, or even run a street party, right? They should be helped to run it, rather than go, here's a lot of bureaucracy, and you can't do this or that, right?
100%. I think you're talking a lot about talking to residents. So what's something that you've been at the doorstep, and has there been a specific, you didn't go into detail, or story that you can maybe talk about that has changed our perspective?
Yeah, so there was one perspective. So, I always thought everybody follows the rules, right? I thought, even if you're elected in council, and we hear about all this corruption and stuff in politics, but I thought everybody at least followed the rules. So I knocked on a neighborhood, or on a door where next door used to be a preschool. So a small building, like a house converted to preschool. That then got demolished, and now they're building 8 flats. So when that permission came along, there was obviously a consultation period, and you can go and object and stuff. And so the person who's living next door, they were told they can go to the council and have their say, have their 5 minutes to say something about it. They turned up and they were told no, they don't get to have a say, and the decision's already been made.
Wow.
And she was like, well, it looks like they didn't follow the rules, so I'm expected to follow the rules. But the council isn't expected to follow the rules.
And in that moment, you expect your council to be on your side.
That's what I mean.
And to run it and help you.
Not on the side of the developer. And again, like I said, I keep saying this to people. I don't mind development, but it has to be sensible development, has to be sustainable development, right? So they should have listened to what these residents were talking about
100%.
and built according to the needs of that area. And just to give you an idea, those 8 flats are being built not even a stone's throw away from the Tesco Towers.
Oh, God.
So it's not like there's no development
area
there. They're going to look out their window in 2 years' time and see 4 or 5 22-story buildings, 24-story.
And I think I heard about 1,400 new homes.
1,400 new homes, and now they got rid of the primary school. They're looking to get rid of the GP.
That's ridiculous.
Exactly.
How is that even? What the hell? That makes no sense.
I know, but again, it's because they don't know Goodmayes. That's the thing. They just see, there's a big space, car park, Tesco's. Let's just build on it. Right. And as I said to you before, there's huge congestion there. There's going to be more congestion.
I think Councillor Noor and I think a few of us in Redbridge Independence have been very vocal on this. We even had that housing meeting with local members of the community, and people
that was very enlightening.
100%, right? People just came in and said everything they needed to say. And for me, it kind of felt a bit cathartic. People in that room felt like, actually, we can have a say now. But isn't it sad that we've come to that point?
Yeah, but also it shows that you're not alone as well. I think this is the telling. I think when I knocked on that door, I felt that she felt that it was a lonely battle. Like it was only her against the council, and it shouldn't be like that.
No,
and we shouldn't be against the council. The council should be on our side.
100%. Yeah. I've got a bit of a funny question for you.
Okay, correct.
Let's say it's May 8th. It's the day after the elections. You've won.
Okay, thank you.
You're a Goodmayes councillor.
Yes.
What's the one change or the first thing you'd like to start working on?
So I've always said this. I really believe in our young, and I feel they've had a hard time over the last few years. And one of the things that young people, especially, you've been to high school, feeling safe is quite important.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see some visible police there. I see a lot of police cars in Goodmayes. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they're doing a great job. But I would like to see some police people patrol or walk around in areas where children are going to be, the park, outside school, just to make them feel safe. I think we need to give back something to our young people, a bit of hope that we care about them.
Yeah.
And we as adults are there to look after them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'd like to see. So say people feeling safer.
Yeah. I think youth services and young people as a whole has been an issue for Redbridge for a long time.
There's nothing in Goodmayes for young people.
Every Saturday, I used to go to Lotsford Youth Centre, and I used to go and play archery. I used to go with my friends. I used to go and hang out, and my parents knew where I was, and I was safe. But like looking at it now, where can kids?
I'll give you another example. So I used to be the chairman of Goodmayes Scouts Association, so many years ago, and they find it hard to find a venue to do their scouting activities. So if we could have a permanent base in Goodmayes, and they could have at least had a permanent base themselves. 1 week they're here, the 1 week they're there. It's not not a really an ideal situation.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to like poor planning and help from the council, right?
Well, consideration. Look, think about it. If you're going to put up 1,400 homes, what's stopping you giving us a venue to host community activities?
100%.
I mean, I knocked on a door where a lady was a private dance teacher,
Okay.
and she can't find anywhere to host her dancing classes, but she has lots of students.
Yeah.
So she's begging and trying to, and everything's expensive. That's private.
Yeah.
So we as the council should be saying to these developers, you can have your 1,400 homes, but we want a massive community hall in those buildings, or around those buildings, for you to build, and that we as the council own, so we can rent it out for very cheap. So this lady who wants to run her dance clubs can run her dance clubs.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, which we don't have to be against development, but we have to ensure that these developers are also building for our
Working
community.
for us, 100%. So we've talked about a practical change that you want to make, which is safer streets and young people. Yeah. What does success look like to you? Let's say you got into that position.
Yeah. So
what does success look like?
So success looks like to me, first of all, the development stuff. Make sure that the proper consultations happening, residents' views are listened to, and we come to good compromises. Okay, where everyone's happy that we have the housing that we need, and we also have residents being looked after. The second thing is obviously ensuring that we have the right facility. So we, GP surgeries and stuff. You call up, long queue. My mum's really elderly. She's really ill. And we call up right on time, wait on the queue, and then we're told it's all gone. So I like to see, making sure that we plan for better facilities, work with the NHS to ensure that happen. Roads would be nice. Again, I know it's low on everybody's priority, but it makes a difference. If you're going along the road and it hasn't got potholes, even visually looking at it would be like. The other thing I'd like to see is more greenery. I'd like to see, I think what's happened is a lot of people obviously have made drives on their houses and their front garden, got rid of the shrubbery and trees. So the council should step in and maybe grow a few trees on some roads, make it more leafy. I remember when I used to live in Walthamstow, we used to always talk about Redbridge being the leafy borough. Yeah. I'd like to see a bit more leaf in the borough.
Yeah. No, I think greenery is a really big thing.
It is.
I was actually talking to a resident in Mayfield, and she said that she said that she has spoken to the council, or she was going to speak to the council about putting a tree in front of her house, because that was a simple thing that she wanted implemented to make her feel better about her street. Yeah. And I thought that was quite
it's good for mental health, 100%. Green and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's just an important thing to consider. Like
exactly.
A green environment.
Some of these things are small things, but they should be considered.
Yeah.
And I think small things can make a big difference.
100%. So I know you spoke about that about the resident in Goodmayes, who you mentioned before. But is there someone on the campaign trail that has really stood out to you, and their story has stayed with you, and that's kind of a driving force for what you're doing now?
Actually, so early on, I knocked on a neighbour on my road. So my road's quite long, so I knocked on their road. And, the things you don't think about. So opposite her is a HMO. And again, she had no issue with the HMO. What she had issue was with the council enforcing their own rules.
Yeah.
And the reason she had concern is because they used to have parties and drugs and all that kind of stuff. And she's got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And she's very concerned about they step outside the house and they see drugs, needles and that kind of usage, and the parties happening at night. And she complained to the council, and all she wanted was them to enforce the rules that they had themselves written. And that really stuck with me, because a lot of people have young kids and families, and you just want to wake up in the morning, not have to deal with grief.
Yeah.
And I just thought to
100%.
myself, that is so true. And it's these small things, and she's not been asking for anything extra. All she's asking is that you enforce the rules that you have written.
Exactly.
And these landlords need to be held to account if they're bad landlord. On the flip side, I've seen very good landlords. Residents have thought really highly about it. But where there are bad landlords, please use the rules that you have written to make the residents' lives much easier.
I can think of one.
Is that too much to ask for?
Exactly. It's not too much. I can think of one particular person, 82 unlicensed properties, living it up in Parliament right now. But just to kind of wrap up this conversation, what's your hopes for the future of Goodmayes and for the future of Redbridge?
Yes, I mean, I'm actually quite positive. I think there will be change. The doorsteps I've gone on to, everybody wants change, so that's really good. And they're happy that we're an alternative that will make that change. So I think, things will get better.
Yeah.
I think if we can make the council accountable to its residents, that'd be really good. If we start listening again, I think that will really sort of mend the relationship between the councillors or the council and the residents.
Yeah.
What I would hope actually is more sensible planning to come along. I don't know if it's too late for Goodmayes because the big areas have already been marked for development, but just in simple things like not turning family homes into rental property where there's no need for it, right?
Yeah.
We've got enough. Trying to also create a mix of communities, so we have a mix of families, single people, elderly, sort of in our neighborhood. I'm not going to complain about. We have a nice cleaner on our road. He cleans the road very well. But obviously, things can always be better. We have a lot of fly tipping. Like I said, I've had quite a few residents talk about fly tipping. That's something I would like to tackle in Goodmayes.
Yeah.
I want to go after people who fly tip and prosecute them. Even in the short term, if it costs a lot, people need to be taught a lesson. But they can't just use our streets as their dumping ground.
100%.
So that's something. And then finally, like I said, it just make our neighborhood look nicer. The trees, repair the pothole, and if landlords are leaving rubbish on their front drive, or even residents who own their own house, at least go around, talk to the residents, make sure they keep their houses nice and clean, so the whole neighborhood looks nice and clean.
You're so right, and just off the back of that, it's like I think some people have lost pride in this Redbridge.
Because if someone else doesn't do it, then why should they do it?
Exactly. Yeah. Before we finish up, I want to ask you one final question.
Right.
Can you describe Goodmayes in 3 words?
Busy,
Okay.
commuter, haven.
Oh, okay. Is that like a 1-word hyphenate? Busy to meet haven.
It could be. The reason I say that is because we've got like Goodmayes Station and Seven Kings Station, so you see a lot of commuters, but still a nice place to live.
Yeah. This is a bit tricky, but I obviously live in the area, so I know what I would go. But if I was coming to Goodmayes and you were taking me for iftar, where would you take me?
Oh, okay. So we've got a few places. But you know what? I'd probably take you to Eva. And the
okay.
reason I would take you to Eva is because I've got fond memories there. When I moved in there, I actually got a new job. And so I moved in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I took my dad when he was alive to Eva's to have a last sort of meal there.
Oh, nice.
And so it has memories for me. And they're nice. And it's a local business. It's not a chain.
Yeah.
And actually, we've got quite a few nice businesses along there, food business. So, but I'll take you to Eva.
Eva's nice.
So it's on Goodmayes Road. It symbolises Goodmayes.
I love that. Do you know what my answer to that is? Yenling.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That is like my favourite restaurant in Goodmayes.
Nice.
I love the food.
That's nice.
Side note.
I'll take you there as well.
Yeah,
you can go
definitely.
You're your neighbour.
I'm gonna go every weekend if I had to. Love that place.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
No worries.
I had a really great conversation. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, lovely.
Hope you learned something. Hope you feel introspectively different about Goodmayes and what you're planning to do. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the Redbridge Independent podcast. We start with Shorful, and we learned some really great things. We heard from him, his experiences, what he's planning to do. And if you want change in Goodmayes, you know who to vote for.